Hello and welcome to the Premier Football Podcast. We've got a jam-packed show today. I, as always, am Rafe Garland. I'm joined here by Joe Doherty. Joe, how are you today?
Rafe, I'm fantastic. Thanks very much for asking.
Like I said, we've got loads to discuss. Before we get on to the football, we're going to have a quick quiz, 3 questions based on the action from the weekend. We've got 3 massive games to talk about: Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs, Southampton, and United, Crystal Palace. Before we do that, I'm just going to ask you very quickly, please subscribe to the channel, smash a like on the channel, share the content around, give us a follow on the socials, guys. We're producing great content, new videos coming out 3 times a week. It's a one-stop shop for all your football action. Joe, are you ready to take the quiz? How are you feeling?
Absolutely, Rafe. Fire ahead. It's psyched to take it.
Right. The questions today are based on obviously 3 big talking points, and they're actually related to the 3 games that we're going to talk about as well. Question number 1. As you know, Gareth Bale has signed and returned to Spurs this week. But the question I have for you, Joe, is for which Premier League team did Gareth Bale make his debut?
Yeah.
Now, remember, we'll give the answers to all these questions at the end of the show. Feel free to skip ahead, find the answers at the end of the video. But before you do, remember to subscribe to the channel. Question number 2.
Yeah. No, sorry. Go ahead. It's fine.
I'm asking the questions around here.
I know you are. That's why I stopped. No, it's fine. It's fine. No, forget the question. I got it. It's all good.
Okay, brilliant. Question number 2. Which 3 countries could Thiago Alcantara have represented at international level?
I certainly know 2 of them. I'm going to have a guess for the 3rd one. I'm going to have a guess.
Yeah, there's actually a very interesting story to go along with his citizenships and his nationalities and who he could have chose to represent. So Stay tuned for that at the end of the show. And question number 3 for all the Eagles fans out there. When was the last time that Crystal Palace won both of their opening games in the top flight? I'm looking for the decade here, Joe.
Wow.
Like I said, the questions go
from that's
medium to hard.
Of course, man. That's a tough question. I'm just gonna have a guess here. It's probably wrong, but they're obviously not the most successful London club of all time. So I doubt there's been too many occasions when they've won their first 2 games in the top flight.
Well, look, we'll move over to the football anyway. I think there's only one place to start this weekend. It was billed as the game of the weekend before, obviously, the fixtures commenced. Chelsea hosted Liverpool, last year's reigning champions, took on the team that won them the Premier League last season, essentially. The team that beat Manchester City to secure the league for them, and the team that Liverpool beat on the day that they lifted the trophy. Was it going to be another fond day for Liverpool fans to remember, was the question everyone was asking. And of course, Joe, it was. Sadio Mane double gave Liverpool a 2-0 win. Obviously, the Chelsea goalkeeper, Kepa, made a lot of headlines. What did you make of the game? Were Liverpool the better team?
Yeah, Liverpool were much the better team. There was a bit of talk that Chelsea's first half game plan was working well until Mane got in behind Christensen. But that is a very key moment in itself. Mane did get in behind Christensen and he was about to round Kepa and make it 1-0. So Liverpool were about to go in 1-0 up. So the game would have been in Liverpool's favour either way had Christensen decided not to pull Mane back. He did pull him back. He obviously got sent off, and then that changed the way that Chelsea were going to play. But either way, Chelsea were going to be in for a tough half. I thought that Liverpool were cautious at the start, but perhaps naturally so. They were, in the end, like after all, playing at Stamford Bridge, and they showed Chelsea a degree of respect. But after the red card in the second half, they just controlled the game. They were so dominant. I mean, the fact that Thiago Alcantara came on, made his debut, and made more passes in just one half of football than any Chelsea player did over the entire 90 minutes says everything you need to know about this match. It was a cruise for Liverpool. Although Chelsea did have a penalty in the second half, I really felt that Liverpool were completely in control. I'd like to hear your thoughts on it as well, Rafe.
I mean, the second half was a total walk in the park for Liverpool. Obviously, they got the 2 goals within a few minutes of half time. I don't think Chelsea adjusted to going down to 10 men very well. Lampard spoke after the game of actually being more proud of the performance this week than he was last week, but I'm really not buying that at all. I mean, once Liverpool scored, the game was done. I know that they had a penalty, and if Kepa doesn't give away that second goal, Frank Lampard was trying to say, well, then we could look at it as almost like a 1-1. But that didn't happen. They were very fortunate to win the penalty in the first place. I think it was an incredibly soft penalty. I know that some people might say Christensen's red card was soft, but I think those people are just wrong, and that's not Liverpool bias. I think that Liverpool were always going to hurt Chelsea in some way. This is the thing about Liverpool. You know, if Chelsea come and try to bring the game to Liverpool like they did, there was always going to be space in behind. And when you have the likes of Salah and Mane trying to get in behind you actively all day, you're going to have a game plan to deal with that. I don't think the keeper was incredibly confident coming out. He didn't put a shout on it to obviously command the ball because Christensen made the foul thinking that Mane was going to get there first. They don't look right, Chelsea, at the back.
No,
They haven't looked right all of last season. The biggest issue was hemorrhaging goals through last season. I know they went out and they signed Thiago Silva. He's not fit yet, whatever. But that's not the answer. They've gone out and signed a load of forwards, and that isn't what they needed to do. Lampard needs to earn his stripes as a coach, man. He's got to, or if he can't do it, he's got to bring in a defensive coach. Someone that can work with these players, put them in some shape. Because, I mean, that run that Sadio Mane made for the red card, it's the same run Sadio Mane has been making since he was at Southampton. You know, that out to in off the left, getting in behind. Like, you know he's quick. Why are you surprised by this? You're giving him a head start on the halfway line. He's always going to get in behind you. It's a basic error that would have led to a goal scoring opportunity or a goal, whatever way you look at it. And like I said, once Liverpool did take the lead and did take a 2-goal lead, they were so beyond comfortable. It was silly. It looked like a training game at times. You spoke about Thiago having more passes than any other Chelsea player over 90 minutes. He completed more passes than any player has ever completed in a 45-minute cameo in the Premier League since records began in 2003-04.
It doesn't surprise me at all. He was just dictating the tempo of the game. I mean, he gave the ball away a couple of times, but that's because he had it all of the time. So you're not going to hit all of your passes to where you want to. I was also very impressed with Fabinho. I think that he is your second best centre back after seeing that display. He was incredibly good. So comfortable reading the play, reading the game, intercepting, tackling, very dominant in the air. His passing is fantastic as well, obviously as a natural number 6. And I really think that given the fact that you've gone and you moved and got Thiago in, Thiago has to play at the base of the midfield. There's no two ways about it. You can't leave him out.
He might
he
feature on
needs
the
to be
left
rotated
of a 3. I don't know if he'll always play at the base.
I mean, this is another argument. I mean, Liverpool just have so many central midfielders now. I think that the best midfield 3 will probably be Fabinho, Thiago, and Henderson. You'd have to say, with Thiago probably on the left and Fabinho but I think that Fabinho playing right centre back, and then Thiago's best position is as a number 6, dictating the pace of the game.
Do you know what the thing is, though?
Deep line playmaker.
I was messaging you during the game yesterday, and I thought the best player in the first half was Naby Keita. For the first half, he didn't seem to give the ball away. He was dribbling past players. He was winning the ball back. He was absolutely everywhere. He didn't put a foot wrong. He wasn't obviously as noticeable in the second half because I think everybody watching the game was watching Thiago, seeing what he was going to do, looking for that little bit of magic. More last year when he did play, when he was fit, we started to see glimpses of the Naby Keita that was signed from Germany with this big reputation and the big expectations for the big price tag. We saw it in pre-season this year, and I think we've seen it at the start of this Premier League season as well. He is so athletic. He is so technically gifted on the ball. He's so intelligent in terms of the spaces that he takes up, in terms of the number of defensive recoveries that he makes. His decision-making, turning with the ball, beating players is absolutely fantastic. I don't know what it is that he can't do, to be honest. So I think that if they can fit him into that midfield with Thiago at the base and Henderson on the right, with possibly Fabinho playing as a centre-back, like we touched on there, I think that's probably their best 11, because I think you've probably heard me say enough times that I'm really not convinced about Joe Gomez. His recovery pace is fantastic. Joel Matip can't be trusted to stay fit. So I think that if you're looking for a back 2 in centre-backs to play together week in, week out, I think you're right in saying that Virgil and Fabinho are the best 2 that Liverpool have available.
Unlike yourself, I'm not 100% sold on Keita yet. I don't watch Liverpool 90 minutes week in, week out, so I don't see him as often as you do. But I kept an eye on him yesterday, and he was good. But I think that perhaps I don't quite get his style of play in the same way that you do. But I might just need to watch him more. I was impressed with Firmino as well. His touch was very good yesterday. He was bringing others into play, just as Liverpool fans always say that he does. And of course, Mane was just lethal, wasn't he? He was the one who was most up for it, I thought, out of that front 3, and deserved both of his goals. And of course, he was the man who got Christensen sent off. So he was man of the match, wasn't he? For his impact in the game, he has to be man of the match.
I mean, there's obviously positives for Liverpool right across the park. I think the only issue that the only concern that they'd have after that game would be the fitness of Jordan Henderson, who obviously missed a large part of the end of last season, was crucially missed for that Champions League quarter-final against Atletico that they were knocked out for. And they do sometimes look like a different force when he's not in the side. Obviously, James Milner came on towards the end of that game to help see it out, but I don't know how much football he's going to be playing this year with the options, obviously, that Liverpool have in midfield. We haven't even spoken about Curtis Jones, Gini Wijnaldum, Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain.
Wijnaldum was good yesterday as well, it has to be said.
He's brilliant every week, man.
Yeah, he is. He's a great player. He's he really is very underrated.
Do you think there's any... Having watched Liverpool now for the last couple of weeks, do you see anybody stopping them winning the league this year, Joe?
No. I think pre-season I was saying that City were going to win it just because teams don't usually defend their titles. But having watched, and last week I changed that. I think you'll probably remember I said Liverpool will win it, and definitely I'll say it again this week. They just look like the dominant team. The respect Chelsea gave to them was massive. Chelsea didn't try anything. Chelsea played like they were the away team from the get-go. I guess it's very difficult to go head-to-head with powerhouses of football, but Liverpool really are the dominant force in English football. That's why Thiago Alcantara, one of the probably the best deep-line playmaker in the world, joined Liverpool. And when's the last time Liverpool have had players like that going to join them? It's usually been kind of up-and-coming players like a Mane or a Salah who they've turned into superstars. Van Dijk as well, you could put into that category. But Thiago is a ready-made world-class operator. And that is just so exciting for Liverpool fans who will want to come to play for them next.
Well, let's talk about Chelsea just for another couple of minutes. Over 200 million this summer so far. And I think we put up a tweet a couple of weeks ago or last week even highlighting or even reminding people of the last time they spent 200 million plus on a load of players. When they spent 70 million pounds on Alvaro Morata and 40 million on Bakayoko and 40 or 30 million on Danny Drinkwater. And like,
25 on Zappacosta. Yeah, there was just it was rubbish buying, and they brought in Barkley as well. Sorry, you go ahead. You had a question.
Obviously, they've gone out and they've bought a load of big names, and yet we haven't seen obviously Thiago Silva or Hakim Ziyech play yet. That they're finalising a deal for a new goalkeeper this week. That's probably the one that they badly need out of everybody they've signed. That's the one that they need to address. Obviously, it is going to take some time for this Chelsea team to come together and gel together. How far ahead of the rest of the pack do you think that they are outside of Liverpool and City? Are they ahead of anyone else in that chasing pack? I'd actually tipped Manchester United. I tipped United for a bit of greatness this year, but they look awful. Arsenal have looked okay. We'll talk about them maybe a little bit later when we glance at the West Ham. They looked a bit shaky in that win. Spurs lost their first game badly, but have come back and won this week. Is this going to be another season where we're looking at the teams outside of the top two falling over themselves, trying not to get into that top four?
Yeah, I think so, Rafe. Although I time will tell, but I'm optimistic as an Arsenal fan that that's not going to be the case this year for Arsenal. That the manager is good enough to get the players motivated enough to be playing consistently at last. Chelsea, I really think that their transfer strategy has been like a 13-year-old boy playing Football Manager. It's just, looking through stats of forward players and going, oh, he looks good. You could think of Ziyech, Werner, Havertz, obviously good players, but do they all fit into the way that Lampard wants to play? He started with Havertz on the right. He's not a right winger. He's a central attacking midfielder. Does he even want to play with a number 10? He doesn't usually play with a number 10. He plays Mason Mount off the left, or like when he plays Ruben Loftus-Cheek, he plays him in wide areas as well. So it's just I find it very confusing. And they haven't addressed the key areas, which we talked about at the start of this pod, which is the defense. They've signed Chilwell, who's injured, but I think that there are question marks over him.
He's no good.
There are question marks over him. And Thiago Silva, they might as well have kept David Luiz rather than getting rid of him and then bringing in another aging Brazilian centre-back. I don't get the hype about this transfer window for Chelsea. All that it does is put huge amounts of pressure on Frank Lampard.
Do you know what I don't understand?
What?
We spoke about the people that they're playing in wide areas there and the people that they've brought in. They're using makeshift wingers like Mason Mount and Kai Havertz. Well, they've got Callum Hudson-Odoi sitting on the bench, a man that they turned down a £30 million bid from Bayern Munich for last year and have given a bumper new contract to. Why?
I don't get it. He's on £180,000 a week. He seems to be doing it every single time he plays for England under 21s. He looks dangerous every time he comes on the pitch. But I mean, man, it's political, isn't it? If you go out, but the thing I can't understand is why is Mount starting ahead of him? I mean, if you sign Havertz for £71 million, he has to play, doesn't he?
But he's a central player, though. Havertz.
He is a central player. Yeah, he is a central player. I mean, you can understand against Liverpool playing him on the right and playing.
I don't think I can. He's not going to get in the game out there.
No, you can, because Liverpool are so good that you want to have three more solid central midfielders. So
well, you don't play him then, man. You don't put square pegs in circle holes like.
Yeah, no, of course I agree. I agree with you there. I'm just saying I can understand the theory behind it for the Liverpool game. I can't understand the theory behind it for Brighton. That's ridiculous, playing him out on the right against Brighton. Play him in his first game, play him in his best position and play a winger out right who can help him. They're doing him no favours. He's not going to settle properly. He clearly isn't settling in the game and a half that he's played so far. But I think at the same time we really have to say people shouldn't be criticising him too much just yet.
No, I'm not trying to launch any criticism at his direction. I'm looking at the manager thinking, why is he playing this new young signing who's new to the Premier League out of position to accommodate the likes of Mason Mount while you've got someone like Callum Hudson-Odoi on the bench? And I really don't understand that situation there. I know there's talks about Bayern possibly coming back looking for him, but if they're not going to play him, it's just cruel to keep him there and keep him out of the team. And it's stupid as well. Now, I'm certainly not convinced about Frank, but look, maybe he'll prove me wrong. We'll move on across London, Joe, from Chelsea to Spurs, two of your favourite teams. Spurs bounced back with a huge 5-2 win over Southampton. Were you surprised to see it?
Yes and no. Yes, because Spurs were so poor last week, but Jose is good at getting response from his players. Let's not forget that. He does have it in him to fire them up. Obviously, he's done it time and again over the course of his career, even if he does seem to be perhaps past it, but that's maybe a conversation for another day. And at the same time, Southampton, as they proved last year, have a collapse in them. And they just let Harry Kane play the same ball through to Son Heung-min time and time again. It was a carbon copy. It's the sort of, what's the controls in FIFA? You'll know more than me. It's when you do the through ball, the chip through ball. It was just a chip through ball. It's L1 and X.
The L1 triangle, yeah.
L1 triangle, yeah, that's it. I mean, it's time and time again. I mean, let's not take anything away from Kane and Son because they were really, really good passes. And I do think this is something we were talking about during the week ourselves, is that do we see Kane moving into a number 10 position now they've signed Gareth Bale as well? I would say that Kane operates better as a number 10, or at least as a withdrawn striker.
I'm going to stop. Sorry, I'm going to put a stop on the term number 10 there because he's not playing as number 10. He's playing as a second striker.
He is playing as a second striker.
Mesut Ozil has taken this number 10 role to like a luxury midfielder, and he's not a luxury midfielder. He's a second striker, a supporting striker.
Yeah, absolutely fair enough. He's the Dwight York to Gareth Bale's Andy Cole, if we can say that.
I'd compare him even more to if they're going to bring Bale. Well, if they're going to bring Bale. Well, yeah. If they're going to bring Bale into a front two though with Son and have Kane dropping deeper and have these guys coming in from wide areas, it might be quite similar to what Liverpool do with Firmino dropping deep to make the space in behind for the wide forwards to get in, similar to what Arsenal do with Lacazette dropping deep to make space for the wide forwards to get in behind as well.
Do you know what I will say? If going off what we've just watched over the weekend, if that is their plan, and teams defend like Southampton defend, Spurs are going to be back in the top four.
But I do want to talk about Southampton and their defending for a moment though, because
shocking.
They were awful. They were awful,
yeah.
And I worry for them now because 2 weeks in a row they went down to Crystal Palace last week, and I know a trip to Crystal Palace is never easy. But Crystal Palace aren't brilliant. And I mean, that Spurs team were really humbled by Everton last week. And they don't look brilliant either. Look, they're a Spurs team. They're not going to be the strongest mentally out of any side. They had managed to take the lead. I know Spurs got an equaliser on the stroke of halftime, but going into halftime, they were level with Spurs. And I think they showed a real lack of of composure and a real lack of desire to go out in that second half. I don't know if they thought the game was past them because Spurs had equalised, but I'm not totally convinced that we're going to see Southampton reach the same heights they did in the second half of last season. I think they could well find themselves back in the situation they were in pre-Christmas, and I don't know if they'll get out of it 2 years in a row.
I think they could get out of it again. I think there are worse teams. We could talk about Fulham and West Brom, who probably, but then Southampton could easily be that third team, that 18th place side.
They were sucked down a bit last year, weren't they? I know.
They were,
drop as well.
They stuck with Hasenhüttl through thick and thin, and he pulled them out of it. But you're right. I mean, you have to have a competent defense, and they don't. They really don't. It was just schoolboy stuff. They kept playing a high line, and they kept not picking Son up, and he just kept on. And they weren't marking Kane. They weren't closing him down. They were just letting him play these very good, but these floaty little curled through balls for Son to run through on goal to.
And look, credit to Heung and Son as well, because some of the finishing was absolutely sublime. Danny Ings took his first very well as well, but I mean the goals in that game.
Yeah. Is Ings really the best striker? Is Ings the best striker outside of the top half of the table? You'd have to say he is, right?
Outside of the top half, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, he scored 20 goals in the Premier League last year, didn't he?
Was it 20? Around that, maybe just a bit under.
19 possibly, but I think he might have hit 20.
Like
I think Vardy hit 22, 24. I think Ings hit 20. I mean, you look at who the best number 9s in the league are, and you think straight away of obviously Jamie Vardy. You think about Harry Kane if he's playing there, but you got to have his name up there as well. Like he scored the goals last year. He did it in a team that was really struggling. I'd be actually surprised. I know we spoke a little bit about this, but I would be surprised if a team didn't come in with a bid for him before the close of the window, especially if Southampton do start to struggle. He could easily have his head turned.
Yeah, he could. I mean, his penalty was well taken, but his first goal was brilliant. The close control and then the finish across the keeper, it was really, really good. It was a hallmark of a very confident centre forward.
Rumours that Sergio Aguero is out of action for a couple of months. It wouldn't be unlike City to come in and try to get him for 25-30 million, would it?
Well, he's a homegrown player as well, which is always attractive to a club like City. I think he's better than Gabriel Jesus. City fans might disagree with me there, but I think that I like Danny Ings a lot more than Jesus. I think he has a lot more about his game. I think he's a better proven Premier League player as well. Whether or not City fans would take to him in terms of the profile, I'm not so sure, but I think that he could certainly do a job for them in the absence of Aguero. But then, realistically, City need to be planning for the next Aguero rather than a stopgap, which is no offence to Danny Ings at the same time. I think that's all he would be for a club like Manchester City. He'd have to be, right? He's not at the level of Aguero, and that's the level that you need to be at to be Manchester City's striker.
Mate, Liverpool. Well, I'm not saying he is at the level of Aguero, but I mean, like I said, he banged in the goals in the Premier League last year for a team that are struggling. Liverpool signed him because they saw the promise and potential that he had, and the only reason he didn't play more minutes for them was because he struggled with injuries. He was fit for all of last season, which is more than can be said for Aguero or even Jesus. I think he'd score considerably more goals than Jesus, but I think he could score 25-30 in the league if he played week in, week out for Manchester City. I have no doubt about that.
I mean, they put him on a plate for him. He has, Sterling, Mahrez, the fullbacks, De Bruyne, setting. Yeah, no, he would. He'd do very well there.
Right. The third game that we wanted to have a look at, I think one that we both probably enjoyed watching almost more than our own teams winning, was Manchester United going down 3-1 to Crystal Palace.
Yeah.
At home as well, mind you.
Yeah, they were awful. United. They were awful. That's the worst I've seen them play since they signed Bruno Fernandes by far. They offered nothing. He offered nothing. Pogba offered nothing. McTominay was their best midfielder and he was crap. You look at the defence, not overly convinced by Luke Shaw at all. I thought that the centre-backs were poor as well. David De Gea's passing. He gave the ball, he passed it, I can't remember which midfielder. I think it was James McCarthy. He passed it right to him in the first half. Tried to pass out from the back and McCarthy just couldn't find the right pass, but if he had done, then Palace would have been in. And then further up the pitch, Martial and Rashford looked a bit off the pace, and Daniel James isn't a Manchester United player.
Talk of Daniel James finally making that move to Leeds, the one that Manchester United hijacked a couple of years ago.
I think that Leeds are a bit. No, I don't think so. I think that Leeds are a bit above his level, if I'm quite honest. If you're looking at the players that they have in wide areas. Is it Douglas Costa who scored those 2 fantastic goals in the weekend? He's 10 times the player that Daniel James is. maybe he could do a job on the other side, but I'm not 100% convinced.
Well, look, we spoke about Danny Ings there a minute ago, moving possibly to Manchester City. Do you think he'd be a better fit for Manchester United?
Danny Ings. But then, no, I don't think so, because I think Martial is actually good. He just had an off day.
But surely they want two strikers.
Rashford's a striker as well, and they have a Gallo off the bench.
Oh, I suppose they do have a Gallo, but I mean, Gallo's not that good.
No, and he's a different type of striker as well.
Rashford can't be playing on the wing and up front at the same time.
I think Rashford is finally embracing being a winger. What we saw last year, his form was excellent.
I think it suits him as well.
It does, yeah. It always. Mourinho was right in the end,
and it's a way for him to get into the England team as well.
It is. He's not getting in ahead of Harry Kane through the middle, that's for sure.
Or Danny Ings.
Or Danny Ings. No, but with Martial, I think if you ask any United, or most United fans, I think that they're happy with Martial. I think his goals return was pretty good last year. It wasn't phenomenal, but it was good. And they'd say that he deserves another crack at the whip this year. But I mean, the thing that struck me the most was that how poor their two key central midfielders were, Fernandes and Pogba. They were anonymous. They just didn't do anything in the whole game. I mean, it was embarrassing to watch, really, because they're so talented and they're capable of so much more. And they just
I love stats, Joe. Sorry, I think that Paul Pogba and Bruno Fernandes created 0 chances each in the game, and they both completed 0 key passes in that game in midfield playing against Crystal Palace.
That says it all. No, really, what I've been saying is just they were anonymous. The game passed them by. Palace's midfield was excellent. That's the best I've ever seen James McCarthy play. He put himself about so well. He was tough in the tackle a number of times. His passing was pretty good, and he was just full of energy.
Is this the answer to stopping Manchester United? It's just don't kick them in the box. I
think you're probably right as well. I put the foot in midfield and make your presence known. Yeah, exactly. The approach was perfect. Palace's counter-attacking was brilliant, but again, United's defending was very bad and their midfield was anonymous, so there was no tracking back on that part, although McTominay did put in one very good tackle to stop a counter-attack. But Palace just kept on throwing men forward. Jeffrey Schlupp was going forward from left wing. Their left back, I can't remember his name. It was the first time I've seen him play a full 90 minutes. He was very good as well. And then Ayew and Zaha and Townsend, who play 90 minutes every week for Palace, were excellent.
Batshuayi as well was quite good.
He came on at in the second half. Yeah, he didn't start because of the game plan they were implementing. It just wouldn't have worked with him. They were playing on the counter attack.
You mentioned Zaha there, and obviously we can't go through the show without talking about him. We spoke about him last week, and I asked you if he looked like a player that was playing as if the transfer window was open. Is he screaming for someone to come and get him still, or do you think he's embraced possibly staying at Palace for another year? Does he look like a player that's more settled, or does he look like a player that is really looking for a move?
I think that if the offer came in, he'd always move. But he was captain on the day, and obviously he enjoyed that. He scored twice. But I think that if a move came in, there was talk of him going to Arsenal last night. I don't know if you saw that on Twitter. There was a lot of chat coming out that Arsenal are looking into the possibility of trying to get Zaha. I think that
do Arsenal not have too many wide forwards at this stage?
They do. The idea was that they would do a deal whereby Reece Nelson went to Palace. Obviously, Arsenal will be having to pay some serious cash as well as that, but they'd be offloading a second string winger in the process. Look, but obviously he's an Arsenal fan, so if that option came up and the bid was accepted, he'd move. I mean, there's no two ways about it. That was the move he wanted last year. It didn't come through. Arsenal got Pepe instead. But I don't really see it. I don't really see it. I think it's too.
Well, look, you spoke about Arsenal there. We'll quickly just round up the rest of the games that have happened. This show is being recorded Monday night, so obviously Aston Villa and Sheffield United hasn't been played yet, and Wolves Man City hasn't been played yet either. Arsenal did win 2-1 against West Ham, a team that we both tipped last week to go down before Christmas. Obviously, they've got a horrible run of forms, but West Ham really made it tricky for Arsenal, Joe, and were very actually unlucky not to take the lead several times in the second half.
Yeah, they hit the crossbar as well, Antonio.
What's the Arsenal reaction to that, Joe?
Well, the positive to take is that Arsenal had a fair amount of the possession. They did very little with it. West Ham had far many more opportunities in the second half, but Arsenal were able to carve them open very nicely twice, and they converted their chances both times. So
defensively, how are Arsenal?
Not as good as we've seen them be in the big FA Cup games and Community Shields in recent months, but not the calamity that they were under Unai Emery. Arsenal seemed off the pace and they lacked focus, but they got the win. And I think that it's you can never overlook the importance of being able to get a win when you're not playing well. I think that's a sign of a good team.
Everton obviously picked up another big win. Dominic Calvert-Lewin bagging his first hat-trick for the Toffees. I think we owe him an apology last year for calling him a championship wing-back.
Yeah, that was in our first ever pod, wasn't it? And that was our claim for the night. And do you know what? At that stage, we had a claim, but he has really changed. He's come on, he's grown as a player so much, and he's really taken on the responsibility of wearing the Everton number 9 with great pride. And he deserved his hat-trick. He's a classic centre-forward. He gets in the right positions in the box, and he's very physical, and he's very good in the air. And it was a very...
You know what? Sorry, West Brom were actually very good in the first half there as well, so we might need to keep an eye on them going forward in future games. A couple of the other results: Newcastle were beaten 3-0 at home by Brighton in probably, I think, the shock result of the weekend.
Yeah, Newcastle were very poor, I thought, certainly compared to their win at West Ham the week before. But Brighton, Neil Maupay's goal from open play was really good. How he
Aaron
took
Connolly
that,
had a nice one as well.
And Connolly's finish at the end was excellent. Yeah, again, a team that we probably tipped to struggle, and indeed still do. But I mean, that was a good result. But Newcastle were very poor. They offered nothing.
For sure, we'll keep an eye on both of those teams. Leicester continued their decent start to the Premier League with a 4-2 win over Burnley, a Burnley team that actually looked a little bit better than we've been giving them credit for. Leicester look firing on, I suppose, attacking fronts, but it'll be interesting to see if they can continue that through the rest of the season. Joe, do you want to know the answers to the quiz questions?
Yeah, I'd love to, Rafe. Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, look, I'm going to ask you then very quickly again. So, question 1: for whom did Gareth Bale make his Premier League debut in 2006?
Southampton.
It was, of course, Southampton. He made 40 appearances for the club between April 2006 and May 2007, scoring 5 goals. For which 3 countries could Thiago have represented at international level?
I know 2 for sure. They're Spain and Italy. Spain and Brazil. And then the third, I guessed it is Italy.
Correct, Joe. He was actually born in Italy while his dad was playing for Lecce. He is, of course, the son of Brazilian international and the brother of Brazilian international Rafinha.
Rafinha, yeah.
And of course, he does in fact play for Spain, having moved there when he was 5 years old. While his dad was playing football, he was there between the age of 5 and 10. Moved back to Brazil for 4 years, and then joined the Barcelona academy at age 14. Finally, when was the last time Crystal Palace won their first 2 home games in the top flight?
In the top flight, okay. Was it the 1980s?
Joe, it has never happened before.
It's never happened before. I wanted to guess that, but because you asked it, I thought, and because you said top flight, I thought that it wasn't Premier League. So I'm not surprised at all. It's never happened before. You tricky fucker. I'll be sure to keep an eye next week for any trick questions.
Yeah. Well, look, thanks for joining me again, Joe. I've had a lot of fun recording the show. As always, I'm going to hand over to you again. Do you have a message for the guys at home? What do they need to do next?
Yeah, guys. Well, first of all, thank you so much for watching. It's been great to chat to you tonight. Don't forget, as always, to smash a like on the video, share the content around, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and don't forget to subscribe to our socials as well. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok.